I've been looking for a video that I could record in 4K for a very long time, and I've finally got an excuse to bust out this 4K technology. Anyway, I have just found this beautiful animation called Puparia, which, as you may or may not know, that's where the term pupa comes from. It's a cocoon. This animation is very gorgeous, very experimental, very dreamlike, and its meaning is abstract. And I watched a documentary from the original creator, and he never actually really went in too deeply to the meaning. The closest thing to a meaning he gave to this animation that he created was that he felt like a lot of old traditions were breaking away and crumbling to give way to a new form of animation, but he still wanted to pay tribute to some old traditional methods of art. All of these images that he colored in colored pencil were done on these massive canvases and scanned in 4K and played at about 12 frames per second to make an animation. Even despite a lot of time-saving techniques such as long still shots, it still took him 3 years to make. So the first one, you can see someone in a very dreamlike environment, and they've got this mysterious creature. I think that this creature is meant to be a leopard seal. It's got the black and white patterns on it, it's got the whiskers, it's got the general face shape. I think whatever fantasy creature he was making is based on the leopard seal. The second thing he mentions a lot in his interview is that his favorite part about manga is how it feels like every panel has some symbolism somewhere inside of it, and it's up to interpretation what it means. So why does this mysterious fantasy creature resemble a lion seal? We don't know. It's up to you to interpret and come to your own conclusions. And we move on to this next scene where it's just this dude in his boxers getting up to go to the bathroom. It's very rich and detailed, even though it's a very simple scene. And the benefit of watching this in 4K is that you can see every single stroke of that colored pencil, and you can see where he really had to just sit there for hours and hours at a time, just scribbling very tiny details. And one thing I really like is if you take a look here, right over to where my horn is, one of his eyes is red. I have absolutely no idea what the meaning of that is. And again, the purpose of it is to come to your own conclusions about what it could mean. Now, in this same scene where this dude is in his boxers getting up to go to the bathroom, they zoom in really close to his eye, and you can see that it's so detailed. You can see the veins in his tear duct. That is just an insane level of detail that no one would have called him out on had he not included it, but he spent the time and the energy to include such a microscopic detail that even in our day-to-day life with beyond 4K vision, we don't ever notice. It's beautiful. And in this same scene, there's this creature that comes rushing towards him. And this creature is a really interesting design. It's got the general outline of an owl, but if you take a look at some of the details here, you can see that it looks almost like a pupa. The name of the animation is Puparia, so obviously this owl pupa has some form of metaphor which we're meant to extrapolate, and this is one of the only ones where we have a strong hint of what it's supposed to mean, and that's the fact that he feels like there's this change in animation and in culture where we've got this shell of tradition that's sort of crumbling away and giving birth to something new and exciting and interesting and scary. And this thing is absolutely terrifying. If his goal was to communicate the fear and excitement of the future, I feel like he did that very effectively here. Just look at these very grotesque but gorgeous details that he put into this shell of this pupa, into the eyes. I mean, he's got 3 or 4 different colors in the eye alone. And one of my favorite things about the animation when we see this in motion is as this creature is rushing down the hallway, the overhead lights shine over it and you can see them reflect in the eyes, and it's just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, the tiny details he puts into this animation. I could gush about it all day, so I will. We then transition to this scene which is very interesting and exciting to me. It kind of shows that whatever world this is taking place in, isn't Earth. It's this weird, bizarre environment. And then we've got this very interesting figure over here on the right of this, what I assume to be a tattooed person over with a fox. And we actually get to see this character in more detail. So as we zoom in on their face, I don't know what these tattoos or markings are supposed to represent. Like, we've got 3 different stripes on the neck alone. We've got this really interesting geological pattern on the face. These eyes have little horseshoes in them. There's so much detail in this figure that I feel like in a traditional animation, people just wouldn't take the time to do. Obviously, there are exceptions where there's extremely high quality art, but for the most part, animators are just trying to find the most efficient way to draw a scene so they can move on to the next thing as quickly and efficiently as possible. This took him 3 years to make, and you can see why. This is the level of detail he's working with in every single frame. And one thing that I think is interesting is that if you look at this figure, you can see that the face does look fairly effeminate, but if you look at the figure zoomed out, you can see that they have a fairly masculine body profile. They've got like a masculine chest, a feminine face, feminine long flowing hair. When he talks about this character, he says he or she, implying that he himself does not know the gender of this character. It's intentionally androgynous. It's almost as if the gender of the character does not matter. We can admire the beauty of a person regardless of the gender of that person. There's just something innately beautiful about the human form. There's this scene where previously this character was in this environment where the landscape is full of reds and blues and whites and yellows. It's a very abstract landscape. Yet seconds later, he's very clearly in front of a crowd of people, modern people. And I noticed that everyone has very gray skin, which to me gives the impression that this is some sort of post-apocalypse. Either all of these people are still on Earth and the landscape and themselves are forever changed by whatever has happened, or these are the results of the alien planet that they now find themselves on. When you look at the image, it does look rather intimidating. It does look scary, but the music that plays during this scene isn't scary. It's very peaceful and serene. So there's this contrast between horrifying imagery and peaceful music, and I don't really know what that's meant to mean. Like, why are they in this alien landscape? Why is there serene music over terrifying imagery? I feel like it kind of reflects how the creator is himself making peace with the weird and bizarre and scary elements that the future may hold. He doesn't know what the future will hold. The future is scary and abstract and colorful and interesting. And there's this really interesting shot where we zoom in on the faces of the people in the crowd. And again, they're ordinary people wearing ordinary modern clothes. So even though we're on this alien or post-apocalyptic landscape and all the colors drained out of their faces, it's still us. The environment around them has changed. Their skin has changed, but they're still ordinary people. They all kind of look up at this sort of alien figure very expectantly. Is this alien figure supposed to be a leader? And then there's this scene where as everyone is staring at him, expecting him to say something, instead of speaking, he just sort of looks away. You can see his eyes bulge out and he looks away, and you want to know what he sees. But despite the fact that we all want to know what has captured this alien figure's attention, we never see it. That's where the animation ends. Something catches their attention before they have a chance to speak to the masses. So something interesting is going to happen in the future. And I genuinely believe that's the entire metaphor of this animation, is like what the future may hold. I encourage you to watch the animation for yourself and come to your own conclusions. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. But I took some scenes from this animation and I brightened it up by a lot. I increased the saturation, not because I feel like the original work was lacking in any way, but just because I feel like there's so much color and it's such a dark scene that I really think it looks more interesting to brighten it up and boost the saturation and make these colors really pop. I just think it looks really cool. I like, appreciating all the work that went into the color design. It's so visually interesting. And then when this alien being looks away, when I boosted the saturation, it put like a red glow in the background, which sort of reflects onto their face. It almost kind of looks like a sunrise beaming onto their face. But yeah, those are my thoughts on this animation. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you all go watch the animation because it's absolutely beautiful. It took this guy 3 years to hand animate himself. Go validate the effort that he put into this work of art for no other reason than to make a work of art. To hand animate in colored pencils, there's so much pressure on animation studios to find the most efficient way to do things that we really aren't going to see anything like this in the future, at least not in any sort of major AAA studio. No one would ever take the time to make something like this. I think even the embodiment of the future itself would be amazed by what happens in the future. That's all I wanted to say. Bye, guys.